Hey everybody, today is October 9th, I think that's the 9th, 2023. I'm Gene, and welcome to the Monday edition of Hanging with Uncle. Before we get started, please hit that subscribe button if you have not. We're really trying to grow our channel. And hit that like button, that thumbs up right there. Really helps us spread out our word. And if you want to be notified when we put new content out or go live, hit that notification bell on the far right. So after having said all that, we have a special guest today and a very dear friend of mine that I worked with in Compton. We were police officers together. So please welcome to the show, Red Pablo Mason.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you. Appreciate you inviting me on your show, and I'm ready to get started.
Yes. Now, just like a little fun fact, the last time I saw this guy, we played skins, and I shot the low round of the day and did not win a skin. I had to come out of my pocket and pay everybody else, including this dude. So.
Yeah, that must have been my lucky day.
That was a fun day, man. I had a really good time.
Yeah,
real good time, man. Yeah. So how you been, man?
Oh, I've been pretty good. You know, I'm a little older, dealing with a few little medical issues, but
Yeah.
It comes with the territory when you get older. And but in general, I'm doing fine. Thank you. And yourself?
Good to hear, man. Well, same, man. I've got that prostate cancer that I'm dealing with, going through radiation right now. But I'm in good spirits, man. We caught it early. I have a good prognosis, and the only thing I'm not looking forward to are the medical bills, which is why we really need everybody to hit that subscribe button.
Oh man, well, I'll be praying for you.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Well, I know in previous conversations that we've had, both of us are registered no party preference, or at least I know I am. I think you are. But so for me, I'm registered no party preference because I don't care about supporting a party as I do about the issues. For example, here in Arizona, the last Senate race we had, and this is just one example, we had this guy, Blake Masters, running, who was openly talking about anti-abortion rights and cutting Social Security, and I'm like, well, time out, dude. I support a woman's right to choose, and I receive Social Security, and I don't want you taking it. So I voted for Mark Kelly. It was just based on the issues. Now, it just so happens Mark Kelly's a Democrat and Blake Masters was a Republican, but I didn't base my vote on a political party. I based it on the issues, and I want to know your opinion, and everybody wants to know, why you're not registered with either party either.
Well, it goes back about 20 or so years, maybe a little more. I saw both of what I call the ruling parties, Democrats and Republicans, who have been ruling, I don't know, for probably 150 years, back and forth. I was kind of disappointed because I saw that there wasn't really any true leadership, or at least what I call leadership. I'm originally from the city of Compton. I come from a pretty strict family, strict religiously anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I went into the military and did my thing there. I had and my job was basically dealing with all these, what people call intelligence now. But back then, it was a top secret job, and we called it communications, and we dealt with everyone, all the services, State Department, CIA, FBI, whoever. right? So I saw what I believe to be true leadership, which is transparency. I saw generals and colonels coming down to talk to people that didn't even have stripes, you know, because they wanted you know, the military has to work as a unit, and they always say you're only strong as your weakest link. And if people
Right.
are afraid or don't understand what's going on, or they're pointing fingers when something actually happens, like what's going on overseas right now in Israel,
Right.
right? Things fall apart. And if there's animosities between groups that are supposed to be able to voice their differences without being condemned or punished for it, unless it's a crime, right?
Yeah.
So I saw that happening more and more and more. So I decided, you know what? I am going to just depend on my own personal policies and because I used to be, which I think most people are today, they're like politically blind. It's like they think about what their political party or the agenda or the bullet points that they get from cable news or any other source of media, movie or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't really. I saw that people started like lockstep repeating things that could not really be substantiated, which I said, oh no, that's not, I started having these like discussions that would turn into like these arguments, right? And it was happening from Democrats and also Republicans. So what I did was, I live in California, and they had a designation which meant, today it's called no party preference, which you were alluded to earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Back then it was called decline to state. So that's how far back I go. It's more than 20 years. Okay, I was like, decline to state because, I was, like I said, I was in the military, and plus I grew up in the quote unquote hood, right?
Yeah.
So I know what happens when people start pointing fingers and saying, oh, this guy's rude or he lied, and I was like, and you can't substantiate it, but I've seen a number of people get killed over stuff.
So I'm glad. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, man. I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought up the point of the collective herd mentality, because, like, we refer to it here on Uncle as that sheep mentality. Oh, this is what Fox said, I have to think this. Oh, this is what CNN said, I have to think this. And instead of choosing sides, like, I do watch conservative media and liberal media, and just because of my education and the knowledge that I have, just my opinion, I know where the malarkey's coming from and who is more along the line of telling me the truth. And it's night and day. It's obvious who's lying to me, and it's the side of the media that's being sued for defamation for lying about stuff. So I'll just leave it at that. And one has already paid out over $780 million in damages for defamation. But anyway, just that herd mentality, man. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say was, when I decided to change my designation, I started to really think about the things that I say personally and believe in, my own personal policies. And I started like, okay, this side is more conservative, this side is more liberal. And then people will go, you mean Republican? I'm like, no, man, I mean conservative. And then I realized that, I was like, there's Democrats that are conservative. And they were like, no, there's not. And I'm like, oh, I realized that all these years I've been having these conversations without asking people where to break down what they're saying, I realize it's like they're just literally repeating like a parrot.
So honestly, in my opinion, being conservative means being responsible, being efficient with your spending. And that's how I look at President Biden. He's more conservative. I mean, he's reduced the deficit, the amount that we're spending towards debt. The economy is growing. So when I look at his administration and what's happening, I'm more optimistic than I am when the right wing is in charge, because just look at the last administration, rose the national debt damn near $8 trillion in just 4 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know the total deficit is like 30 trillion or something like that now.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous, and that's from decades of, like I said, a lack of leadership in that case, economic mismanagement, and it comes from, I can prove it, but I'm like, that comes from both of those organizations, the red team and the blue team, agreeing on these budgets or disagreeing like they're doing now with this budget, but they all want to put all their, what they used to call pork. It's like they're putting all the pork in there. And sort of the red team threw in some clauses about border control, and the blue team threw in some clauses about we still need to give more money to the Ukraine. And they're arguing, they're not really arguing with each other on principle. They're arguing with each other is like, well, if you're going to get that, I'm going to get this, which is the reason I left the parties. I'm like, look, man, you guys get in a room, come to a compromise, figure out what's most important right now for the nation, not for your district or your party or against the other party. You're supposed to be representing the people with checks and balances. That's what I learned in the 7th grade, I think.
Yeah.
Civics.
That's like basic civics. You elect a representative from that district, but he doesn't just represent that district. Every time he casts a vote, it affects people nationwide, not just the people in the district where he or she lives. Yeah. So,
and I don't mind people fighting for the districts, like, hey, let's bring this big corporation over here and get jobs. I understand that, but I have a problem when you're like, I need $5 million for my uncle's, solar city. I'm like, no, that's just what we call nepotism or biasness. And anyway, it really comes down to the corruption, which I think we have had conversations about before.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where you stand, but I'm like, the corruption really comes from the lack of leadership, which is the politicians. Their enforcement wing is the legal system, the courts. That's why there's always such, what do you call it? There's always a big uproar anytime there's a Supreme Court or any judge of a high rank being appointed to certain areas, right? Right. And like one thing that came to my mind, which made me so proud that I wasn't part of any party. This last lady, I don't know her name, but she's a black lady. I watched her appointment hearings, and I thought she was real. She was, so for Supreme Court, I can't remember the lady's name.
Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Okay, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, she sounded so harmonious and educated until somebody asked her about how would you rule, blah, blah, blah. It was some case that came down to, and they asked her point blank, do you know what a woman is? Because of all this controversy out in society.
Yeah.
Society about over the LGBTs, and I don't care if those people, I'm like, they got a right to do their own thing too.
Everybody's
Where I
got
draw
to
but I'm like, I draw the line with the stuff in the schools that they said weren't going on, but they are going on. I mean, I've seen it in Congress, right? You know, like little kids got these little pornographic books and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, nobody should be messing with kids. I think everybody agrees on that.
And we talked about that on Friday. You know, any type of literature is supposed to be age appropriate.
Right. And getting back to my point, when they asked that Ketanji, you said her name is?
Ketanji Brown Jackson.
I thought she was giving really great answers until they asked her that. And then she said she did not know what a woman was. And they said, excuse me?
I watched those hearings, and honestly, what I saw her doing was not falling into the Republicans' trap.
Yeah, well, see, that's one thing. Let me stop you there. I don't get into Republican, Democrat. That's where I tend to have tension with people.
It was Republicans asking her that question. That was my point.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. That's fine. I'm saying I'm not like that. I look at her, I go, this lady, I don't have any political, like you're saying, I don't look to, I'm like, it's a fact that we have males and females. If somebody is going to be on the U.S. Supreme Court, and she tells me she does not know what a female is, or a woman, I got a real big issue with that. I'm like, excuse me, are you a woman? Is your mother a woman? I would go into that. That's not a Republican thing. That's just like common sense.
Pablo, there was a Republican that asked her that question. That's why I brought that up, because that's how ridiculous it was. I mean, if you want to ask somebody going on the Supreme Court some questions, what are her opinions on the issues? Like, what are your opinions on Roe v. Wade? What are your opinions on Citizens United? What are your opinions on... Yeah, no, ask me some legal questions. Don't come at me with that bullshit about do you know what a woman is. That is totally irrelevant to the job of Supreme Court Justice.
I think they asked her that. I think all the questions were legal. I don't care if it was a Republican, Democrat, or a Martian.
When I mean a legal question, like something that has been ruled in the courts that there's precedence, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I don't think it was more basic than that. It was like, the one I saw, the day I saw, they asked her, do you know what a woman is? And she said, I can't really, and that broke my heart, man. After that, I was like, this is the first black female that's going to be on the United States Supreme Court.
Well, you know, to me, I look at it then, if the same standard is like you're asking Justice Thomas and Justice Alito and Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett about their views on Roe v. Wade and how they're saying it's settled law and get on the bench and overturn that shit. You know, to me, there's no bigger hypocrisy than what they've done. But anyway,
anyway, that's everything. I was just trying to describe how people, based on their party politics, which I think you're really saying, even though I don't think you think about it the same way I do. My point was, that's the reason I left, because of these type of, I'm like, come on, man. It's like you saying you don't know what an elephant is, or you don't know what the color blue is, or you don't know what a so-called flamingo is. Bullshit, man. Don't say you don't know that, because that makes me think that she's so biased, which they all are. I know that. They all are. Her biasness controls her political biasness.
I disagree, but anyway, that's a totally, we're getting off topic.
Well, that was my central point of why I left the political spectrum in general, because people, the central point I was trying to make is, people put their politics, they think with their politics first, instead of saying, like, let me give you another example that's not controversial for you. It's like, they used to say, oh, that person's a tree hugger. She must be a hippie. She must be a communist. She must be a left winger. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, man. I like trees. I like to hug trees. That don't mean I'm all of that.
Right.
It just means I like trees. And right. And then another conversation I used to have back in the day was they were like, Republicans like low taxes. That's what they would say under Reagan. I was like, okay, well, I like low taxes, but that doesn't mean that I'm all that. Oh, yes, you are. I'll go, no, that's because you think with your politics first. I don't think with my politics first. And my actions back that up, which is why I have so much of this conversational debate going on with people, because I was like, you keep saying you don't take that from your political biasness, but it sure in the hell sounds like it.
I'll tell you mine.
Because, yeah.
Mine is, and I'm tired of this, oh, Democrats are the tax and spend party. No, they're not. That is the authority of Congress to tax and spend, because that who decides what the budget is, where the money goes, and how it's spent. So just the fact that maybe back when Tip O'Neill was Speaker of the House and Democrats control the House for 40 years, they got that label. But that is not the philosophy of Democrat. It is the responsibility of Congress to tax the people and spend the revenue for the betterment of the United States of America. That's mine. But anyway, let's move on, because this is something that I really want to get your opinion on. And that's the current situation going on in the House with the speakership being vacant. Just your opinion, who's responsible for that, and what the next elected speaker needs to do before the elections in November of 2024.
Well, given that I'm a declined state, unable to support either side, I just look at the facts, man. The people that voted him out were so-called the more conservative or hardcore.
Yeah, what they're called the crazy part, the crazy wing.
Yeah, well, I don't get into that.
That's what they're being labeled.
Okay, well,
So
the people that labeling in that, I don't participate in any of that against them or Trump or Biden or anybody. Okay,
yeah,
I'm just like, look.
Matt Gaetz is the one who brought that vote to the floor.
Yeah, and the people, I consider that name calling. I'm like, okay, what's your point? That's all I want to know is what's your point? So it's got the hardcore, and also the Democrats all voted him out too, I guess.
Well, but again, Democrats would not have had the opportunity had not Republican Matt Gaetz brought it up for a vote in the first place. And I think McCarthy's weakness, just to get the gavel to let one person have the power to bring up a motion to vacate him, I think also had a lot to do with it. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, but like I said, if you want my opinion, I just look at what happened. I look at the evidence of what happened, the outcome, the conclusion, because like I said, there's no real leadership there anymore. I've heard they voted him out for various reasons. The people on the left say one thing, the people on the right say one thing. Republicans say we voted him out because he didn't do what he said he was going to do when he was elected. And the people on the left say the Republicans voted him out because he's, all these different things. So I'm not... That's what the issue is. Everyone's so hyper partisan, which is exactly against the checks and balances that you learned in the 7th grade.
You're absolutely right.
And people try to make excuses. That's because the Republicans did this.
Well,
so what?
But this is how partisan it really is, man. Again, like we talked about at the very beginning, the job of our elected officials is to go to work on behalf of the American people.
Yeah, but there's...
So now Yeah,
motivation is gone.
It is because we're on the brink of a shutdown, and McCarthy did his job, worked with Democrats to pass a continuing CR, and because he worked with Democrats, that infuriated Republicans who brought up or supported the bill to vacate McCarthy from the speakership. Because he did his job and was bipartisan, he got ousted. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's one way to describe it. Another way to describe it is, like, if you look from the position of, say, the hardcore Republicans, this is what I would say is really going on. What's going on from a strategic point of view, a political strategy, the hardcore Republicans really are on their quote unquote, they're in the trenches, and you know, they're being shot at. I mean, the military, they're on their last stand. So they kind of, if they don't do anything, they'll be eliminated faster than if they do something. So they're willing, I think they were willing to say, hey, we got to get rid of this guy because he's agreeing with the opposition, which is exactly the point I've been making.
Exactly.
It's so hyper partisan that the hardcore Republicans, whose some of their tactics from 20 or 30 years ago are not they're not as effective as they used to be. Let's just put it. And then you got people on the left, like you said, the big tax and fins. On the left, I mean, it's not a secret. Most of the blue zone areas like New Jersey, New York, California, they have higher tax. It's not really based on a congressional thing. At least that was never my idea of it. My idea was, if you live in a deep blue area or a big city run by Democrats, you're going to pay higher taxes, and that in fact seems to be the case. And that's why we have this mass migration right now over the last, probably since the COVID, from states controlled by blue to states controlled by red. Is it because the red Republicans are better? No, it's because money in the economy is falling, and they're going to follow that economy to places they feel they're going to have more of their dollar. And so people turn those into political arguments.
Well,
it's just like when. Well, let me finish.
Go ahead.
That's my point with, like, the example I gave earlier, where people would say, "Oh, you're a Republican if you like low taxes." I go, "No, that means I'm smart." I mean, why would you want to pay 20 cents for something you can get for 10 cents? That's just dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a political thing. It's only a political thing because you guys have turned it into a political thing and then became hyper partisan about it to the point where you want to beat each other over the head with it.
So you're right. I can tell you that Arizona was considered a blood red state when I moved here, but because of the migration to get out of the higher taxes and making your money go farther, I've run into a lot of people that have relocated here to Arizona just because of the cost of living, and a lot of those people, because they came from California, voted blue. Right. Now we have here in Arizona a Democrat governor, Democrat Secretary of State, Democrat AG, 2 Democratic senators.
That's going to happen in Florida and places like that also, because people move from California and New York down to a so-called, and see, Florida is not as red as people think it is. It's always going back to the 2000 hanging Chad, and even before that, they always had this like real close elections, you know.
So same here in Arizona. When I moved here in 2014, I checked the Secretary of State's website, and the voter registration was divided pretty evenly in thirds between Republican, Democrat, and Independent. But Democrats were playing matador defense here. So, like when I was a precinct committee person, Democrats were allowed like over 5,000 PCs, and during the 2016 election, there were 800 just here in Maricopa County. So they were just playing matador defense. They were doing nothing, but that's what Trump getting elected in 2016 did. It woke a lot of people up, and that apathy got them excited, and you've seen the voter turnout since then. It just keeps increasing,
Yeah, I think there was the last election was the highest turnout in history or something.
Yeah.
But even Trump's so, he's probably the most polarized figure in society, but I live in California, so there's a lot of people out here doing voter drives at the grocery store or whatever, right? Or you talk to your friends, right?
Yeah,
And they'll say, basically, Trump's an idiot, Trump's a devil, it's like, do you agree? I'm like, no. And they're like, so that makes me this like alien. I'm like, oh, you support Trump? I said, I didn't say that. I just don't think he is what people have said he is. So if that makes me, that just means I got an independent mind.
yeah.
I haven't seen anything, but people won't accept that anymore.
Well,
Which is why I left, these sort of political ideas, or what they call identity politics and all this kind of crap. You got to choose a side.
that's why I wanted to have you on the show, man, to hear that independent mindset, and just to let people know it's not about being a sheep. It's not about picking sides. Be on the side of the Constitution. Be on the side of the issues that are important to you. It makes no sense to me how a senior citizen collecting Social Security would vote for the party that is openly talking about cutting those benefits. It boggles my mind, but that's that team mentality, because, heaven forbid, I could vote for this other person.
Well, people that do that, I don't care what side they're on. Like when I see these votes in Congress where it's like all the Democrats voted this way, all 250 of them, and the other 250 Republicans voted that way. I'm like, how is that fucking possible with 500 some people?
That's
not even. It's so funny, because when I was in the military, we would look at places like Cuba or Russia, right?
Yeah.
And we sit in these classes and they go like, Fidel Castro got 99% of the vote, blah, blah, blah. And they would tell us that is like statistically impossible for people to keep voting that way.
Right.
They have to be in some kind of fear or controlled with tyranny.
Or it doesn't matter what they say. He just says, I got this many votes and I'm in charge.
And so I'm in the mid 90s at this point. I'm like, well then, why don't we say that when our people do it in Congress?
Well,
that's different. That's different. I'm like, how is it different?
Well, I tell you what, man, this is a conversation we're going to have to pick up at another time, because we're running past time. I want to thank you for being on the show, and we definitely want to continue this conversation, because
all right, I'm a wild one.
As things keep progressing, man, we got to have that independent voice out there. I can't be the only one. And look, I'm no party preference, and even you and I don't agree on every issue. But we can have a civil conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate you don't become an emotional wreck and flame out, which is a common occurrence here where I live in Southern California.
Yeah.
It's just people, they just like, oh, well, I'm like, oh, man, you don't want to have a conversation. You want to be a tyrant. Yeah. I mean, and we used to run into that at the street, remember?
Yeah.
Like, hey, what are you doing over here? Explain why you're in this woman's backyard. At 3 in the morning.
The next time you come on, we're going to have some Compton stories, man, because...
Okay, man.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for inviting me on the show, and you take care, man.
You too, man.
I'll be praying for you and your family, and...
Same, likewise.
Yeah, man, get some rest, too. Get some rest, man. Meditate, and...
Definitely,
and
man.
make sure you take some peaceful time every day.
Promise. All right, brother. I will talk to you soon, man. Thank you again.
All right.
All right.